Let's talk homeschooling vision. Please like and subscribe. I would love to see you around here more often and encourage you on your homeschool journey. So I first did my own homeschool vision before my children were actually preschool age. I think they were like 2.5 years old. I read a book about schooling and it made me like focused on homeschooling and I couldn't shake it. I just had to get down all of my thoughts, and that's where this process sort of manifested itself by sort of getting all of the ideas out there on paper, all of my questions, talking it over with my husband, and then coming to some conclusions about that. And over time, that same process has helped me so much. So I'm just going to walk you through that. It's nothing too deep, but it is extremely helpful, especially if you might be where I was, like out in this ether of like, oh, I must know like all the things about why I'm homeschooling and what is this for and what kinds of things are we aiming for. And every time that we've gone through that process of brain dumping and then discussing and figuring out our goals, we have come actually to the same exact goals over and over again. And that tells me that even with new information, that my heart and my husband's heart are really sort of set on what our vision is and what our goals are. And I suppose that it is probably true for everyone that you have your own educational philosophy already. It's in there. You just have to get it out of the depths of your heart and write it down on paper, solidify it, and use it in your daily life to aim your curriculum choices and all of the other choices in your homeschool. The Bible says that where no vision is, the people perish. It's extremely important to know where we're going so that we can get there. If you don't know what target you're shooting at, you're not going to hit it or anywhere close. But if you have a target in mind, you can aim, you can shoot, and it's going to land somewhere approximately to where you aimed it. And if our children are arrows, we want to aim them in the right direction. We need to know where we're aiming them. And it's not just for people of faith, obviously, but a person of faith should probably pause before they go forward trying to get their own vision and try to get the Lord's insight about why they're homeschooling, what it's for, and what is their purpose in it, and just ask Him for the Bible verses that will help you guide your way. And He has been so gracious to provide that for me, some homeschooling Bible verses to help me on my journey. And it's just been so helpful to have a vision. It's like going from wandering in the dark woods, not knowing where to go, to being on a paved path directly headed where I want to go. I would also suggest that you try to put out of your mind all of the other styles and philosophies of education that you've heard. It's not going to hurt you one bit to start from your own vision and then add those things in as kind of tools to reach your goals, rather than, just adopting somebody else's philosophy of education that was not geared towards your family or your values. It'll save you some heartache, some wondering like, why am I doing this? And does this really help us? Is this what we're supposed to be doing? You don't want to end up going against your conscience or your gut feeling so that you could adopt somebody else's ideas. You know what I'm saying? Just do yours first, and then you can adapt as you learn more information. So how I first found a vision. It is from a bottom-up approach. So some people might say like, start with like your overarching goal and then write in the specifics down there. That's not how my brain works. I'm always in the nitty-gritty details. So I start by doing a big brain dump. And I wrote down all of my thoughts, all of my desires, all of my open questions. And I wrote it all down. And then I formatted it a little bit and shared it with my husband. And we set a time and a date to discuss what was written down on that list. And I've got to tell you, that was one of the most fulfilling and like blessed conversations I've ever had with anybody, because we literally got on the same page about our homeschool, and it was just a blessing. So I would definitely suggest discussing it with the people who are most invested in your children's education too. And then after that, like, we discussed that list, and we came to some conclusions, and I wrote all of those down. We made some decisions in that conversation about how long our school year was going to be, our school week, what we wanted it to look like, many subject areas, and a lot of new information came to light for me that I didn't know was even in his heart about how to homeschool and what his goals were too. So it was just really, really a good conversation to have. So first the brain dump, then the discussion, okay? And then you're going to go through that brain dump and sort of recategorize things. So hopefully the first time you go through, you keep it kind of short, like a couple of pages, and you write down all of the things, all of the questions, and all of the desires that you have for your homeschool. And then you sort of categorize them in whatever is, appearing kind of obvious. So you might have a category called spiritual goals. We did. And you might have a category academic goals, practical goals, character and training goals. You might have a bucket list. And so you want to put those in their particular categories. And then once they are all categorized, you can, and open questions is a category too. Once they're all categorized, you can probably look and find some sort of like a through line in those categories. So for instance, if you listed out that you want them to do poetry and music and art and have like a really beautiful literature base in their education, if you wrote out several things along those lines, you could sort of sum it up and synthesize that information into one sort of higher goal, which would be like a focus on liberal arts. I want you to go through that list, that brain dump. Hopefully you keep it kind of short so that you don't get overwhelmed, and then categorize it and then sum it up. Synthesize those points into like less than 10 goals. Okay. The first time we did it, it was like, I think I had like 3 pages of questions and answers and discussion points and all of these things. But now I have 5 main goals and they're very succinct. So that's the method I chose. So first it's a brain dump, then it's categorizing all the things, and then it is summing them up and synthesizing them into very particular goals, and that is your vision. And so I'm going to share that process in a little bit more detail with you now. So number 1, brain dump. What do you want in your brain dump? Well, everything. You want all of the things that are coming into your heart, like what kind of person you want your child to be, what kind of career do you want them to have, what kind of flexibility you want them to have when they're choosing their career. How much time do you want to devote to different subjects that aren't usually required? So in this brain dump, you're going to want to include any standards and convictions that you have about what you're not going to allow in your homeschool. You're going to want to include any subjects that you want to teach them that are not otherwise required by the government. So if you want them to learn computer programming under your roof, you should put that in there. If you want them to be able to be ready for selective colleges, for instance, you're going to need a different workload in high school than you do in middle school. So write down your goals for the adult that you are raising right now. What are your goals for the adult that you are raising? What do you want them to be like? How do you want them to think? What is their view? What is their knowledge base? Just write down everything that's already in your heart about your homeschool. Get it down on paper. If you have big open questions, write those down. If you have small open questions, write those down. For instance, you might want to figure out, when is your homeschool year? When does it start? When does it end? How many weeks do you take for break? And that sort of thing. When do you take your breaks? So you might want to just write down all those questions. Now you probably already have a lot of ideas floating around in your head. Just get those down on paper and don't worry about all of these questions if you already have a bunch of stuff in your head. This is for somebody who doesn't even know where to start even wondering about homeschool. So, like, what subjects do I wish I had learned better as a child that I want to emphasize in my homeschool? How was I schooled? How did I learn certain things? Do I want to implement that in my homeschool or not? What habits am I so glad that I learned well that I want to pass down to my children? Yeah. What will I regret most if I don't teach it to my children? Or what will I be like, oh, I should have done that. I should have taught them that. We should have gone there. We should have done this. Like, what do you want to avoid regretting? What are my fears and worries about homeschooling? Maybe get that out there. Are there any areas of learning that I'm interested in, but I need to research? You could write that down. If you have an education philosophy in mind that you want to try out, or that you want to think about, or you want to research more, write that down in your open questions. So what is this about? You have some questions maybe about how to approach certain topics. For me, one of those questions was, when do you start learning a foreign language? When is the best way or the best time to start learning a foreign language? And I also asked that for a musical instrument because, my child is 2. If the best age is 3, I need to know. But I actually found out that the best age to learn that is a little bit later, and I have a whole video on elementary foreign language. Just whatever questions you need to continue researching, write those down. Okay, so do your brain dump. For number 2, categorize those things. So there's going to be some things that fall into certain categories. So for us, we had spiritual goals and physical academic goals, practical goals, and we had character and training goals, and we had open-ended questions. And then you can go into those categories. So for instance, in spiritual, this is one of my favorite tidbits of information from this video that you're watching right now. This is like my favorite point. In that spiritual goals, some of those goals have to be reached only through prayer and through the power of God. So that gives you, if you categorize their spiritual goals, put some that you can reach through prayer and put some that you reach through modeling. You have to be the example for it to work. And then put in the third category under spiritual goals, the things that you actually have to train and teach. Okay, so now you went from having these floating ideas of what kind of spirituality you want your children to have, and now you've got a list of spiritual goals that you need to pray for them for, spiritual goals that you need to pray for yourself for so that you can be a good example and know how to model that behavior. And then you also have a section where you actually have to determine what kinds of materials you're going to use to train them in those spiritual things. It's great. These vision things are great. It just really helps. Okay, and academic and practical goals. You can put those specific subjects that you want them to learn, requirements by the state. You can put also like what kind of level of education do you want them to have an education out of high school that is equivalent to the public school education or better? Then you might want to write that down right there. Do you have specific curriculums that you know you're going to use, either because you already own them or because they've already worked for you? For us, my husband knew what math curriculum we were going to use since before we were even married, because he really liked this curriculum company when he was in college, almost wanted to go work for them, and they're the like math Olympiad championships, art of problem solving. I'm talking about art of problem solving. So he knew that he wanted a super math-based program, and he wanted the best math program that he knew of, that he thinks is in the whole world. So that's the one that he chose. Well, that helps me if I put it down in that academic section, because they have a plan for all the years. So I already have my math planned out, but I wouldn't have gotten that information had him and I not talked and I hadn't made this vision list. So yeah, brain dump your academic goals, organize them, and you could even go further and separate them out based on like the things that you learn by books and the things that you learn by doing. Just whatever categories naturally arise out of your set. For character and training goals, you can be generic. You want them to be like good employees. You want them to be entrepreneurial. You want them to be able to run their own business, that sort of thing. Just write it down. Write it down and then categorize it. For open questions to research, I love that section. Just write down your open questions. Some of those you might need to answer them quicker than others. So for instance, one of the things that we had to decide was like, when do we sign up for HSLDA? And we decided like not until they're actually in school. So if you can get together with your spouse or whoever else is highly invested in your children's education and just talk through those things that you've formatted, that you've categorized, and make any open decisions that you can make together in that point. Make like a to-do list of what else you need to research, and there you will have like a very thorough understanding and reflection on what it is that you care about in your homeschool. And so that leads us to the final step, is to synthesize and summarize those points. Try to siphon down your goals to under 10 goals. We got down to 7 and then down to 5. So I have a really good grasp about what we're aiming for and how to get there and what to do in my homeschool, because I have a very simple set of goals that I understand, and because I've done this process so many times of just reflecting on what we're actually trying to accomplish. So one thing I found early in my homeschool journey as I was doing this was that almost all of my goals require my children to be excellent readers. That lends itself to the question, well, how do I teach my children to be excellent readers? And so I have a video on that topic of how to teach your children how to read, and what I've learned all about it, all the research, what it says, the best methods according to science. So that video is here. Thank you so much. You are a beautiful person, and I'm so glad that you came to be with me and talk about these things. Truly, it's a wonderful experience to be a homeschool mom, and just having a vision makes it that much easier to do. I hope that you have a blessed homeschool journey and that you know exactly where you're headed. Thank you so much. Bye.